I keep coming, okay. Right, run up here and draw back. He's looking right at us. Shoot. If this deadfall wasn't right in front of us, he'd be able to shoot him.
Should we just duck up into this?
Crap.
I couldn't hold my draw that entire time. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I had to let down. I couldn't hold it anymore. That was a nice buck. I would have shot him, for sure.
The good thing is our wind.
I feel like he spooked really hard.
He didn't spook. He didn't know. He never got our wind. He didn't spook hard. It's during the rut. He could come back through. A different buck could come through. I say we just climb.
We gotta get up in the tree.
We decided to get down. We're just not expecting a ton of daylight movement. So we're going to do some scouting and still hunting through some areas with this high wind. And maybe we, find an area where we got a doe in heat and, kick up a bunch of deer. We'll go cover some miles.
Everything just like right back here. You know?
this scrape is like textbook community scrape. We found a couple of them in this, I mean, this place is thousands of acres. We found a few that are like this, and this is the first time we've ever been back here to this particular area, and because of how hard it is to get back here, I bet we're the only people to get back here, and with the other stuff getting pressured, it might be stacking the deer into this particular area. Of course, it's the route, so who knows. But this is a good example of a big scrape that gets hit by a lot of deer. It's got good looking branches hanging down, and we got it next to a couple oak trees right here on this ridge. So this is like, could be a good textbook spot, like late October. This could get good daylight activity. It's nice and secluded. All right, so we're doing a lot of scouting, just really covering miles and kind of still hunting. I mean, it's loud, so you don't have to go super slow to be quiet. And we wrapped around one little beaver swamp, found a big thigh-sized rub, and just kept following up this little ridge. I mean, it's not like hill country ridge, it's just like a little, 20, 30 foot elevation gain ridge, real thick, high stem count, and a couple scrapes. And then I just looked over the lip and I could see a buck. He's probably 25 yards. It was just thick though. And, tried to grunt at him a couple times, get him to stop. I tried, cutting up ahead to see if I could, cut him off a little bit. He was he was a decent buck. He was headed right up the spine of this ridge essentially. So we just followed the spine up. The wind is blowing right down the ridge. So we got a just off wind for if deer want to do the exact same thing that buck just did. So that's kind of the hope. I mean, it's, mid-afternoon, it's hot. It's like 70 degrees. Northern Wisconsin, it's hot for this time in November. But we got a giant community scrape right up here that we found. I mean, it's probably 10 foot across, all scraped up. Not that the scrapes are getting hit super hard right now, but we got some front cover right here on this deadfall. So we should hopefully be able to see deer coming up from right down here. I got my bow with me, Sam's got her bow with me, and kind of the thought is we got the camera between the middle of us, and if we see a giant, I'll pick up my bow, and if we see any other buck, I'll grab the camera, and Sam will try to get a shot. So I guess we'll see how it goes. I'm about to watch the footage. The shot hit right where I was aiming. It looked like it. When I drew back, it looked like he was just going broadside. And I don't know what it was. He just stopped. He just being cautious or whatever. I don't think he saw us. This little twig right here. I was looking at my broadhead. That twig was right in front of my broadhead. And this twig's right above it. I needed him to step like 5 more yards. He moved his back. He acted cautious. I don't know if it was us. Like if he caught just a little drift of our wind. But he did that little.
He's sniffing.
Yeah,
his nose up?
He might have
smelling. His nose was up and he was smelling.
Because he did that little back leg, and I was like, oh, something's right. He's not. Something's up.
He might have, and he's looking right at me.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I knew you were kind of exposed.
I wasn't moving, but you could see me.
So I was like, I basically was like, okay, he's quartering to. If I need to try and get a shot, I've got the right setup for it. When I leaned forward and I looked, verified my broadhead was just going to clear that little twig, and it looked like that arrow hit right dead center between the left and the right legs, right about the right height. So I'll look at the footage, but I'm fairly confident right now.
Dude.
Seemed like a nice deer. So we looked at the footage. In my mind, I remembered him being a little bit more head-on. But when we played back that footage, and the reason I thought that, I think, was because the way the light was hitting him, and he put his head up and his chest was exposed. But when we looked at the footage, I mean, his body is definitely quartering to more than I thought. In hindsight, I really would have wished that my arrow would have hit maybe 3 inches further to the right. I think that would have been ideal. Best we can tell at that angle, the arrow entered just left of the brisket and probably exited out somewhere mid-body, a little bit forward of mid-body most likely. So definitely not feeling. I wish I could replace the shot. I'm not regretting taking the shot opportunity. I think that's a makeable, doable shot on the ground with a deer as close as that one was. But I just didn't execute it as well as I could have. So for that, I'm kicking myself right now. I called Shane, good buddy Shane Simpson. He has the Cali Chronicles on YouTube, tracks a ton of deer. So I gave him the first call just to see what kind of insight we could get. Sounds like the game plan, we're gonna go check the arrow impact site, see if we can find blood, which on that kind of hit, there tends to be a lot of blood right away. We'll look for the lighted knock, the arrow, all that stuff, and we're going to give him an hour before anything, and then slowly start moving, tracking blood. Best case scenario, I nicked the heart, or I got some really good vasculature in the front lower portion of that chest cavity, which there's a lot of blood vessels in there, and he's down, didn't go very far at all. Now, there's also the possibility that I missed that other lung, shot in front of the left lung, and missed the heart, and just got the one lung, possibly stomach, possibly liver, but primarily a one lung. And if that's the case, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but it definitely makes recovery a lot harder, and the deer can go a long ways on that type of a hit. Already at the site of the impact here, I mean, there's blood. There's quite a bit of blood. It looks like, look at this. It's bubbly. Again, we think that we at least got one lung, so hopefully artery. Definitely seeing a lot of this bubbly blood is a good sign for now.
How's the blood look on it?
I mean, the blood looks good, but that's not the main. It's just coated with blood.
Yeah.
But if it's one lung, a lot of blood doesn't necessarily tell you much. Based on the amount of blood that we're seeing right here at the site of impact, I'm optimistic that I got some major vasculature, high pressure arteries, hopefully in the front of that chest cavity, that's causing that much blood to evacuate almost instantly. no gut matter on the arrow, which means that I for sure missed the stomach on that offside. Yeah, this has got all bubbles in it too. All right, so we're slow. It's been an hour. We're slowly taking up the trail, and we're gonna do a lot of watching out in front of us, because if that deer does get up, we want to be able to see him and read his body language. We want to be as conservative as possible. See him. He's got his head down. It looks like he's done. Now that we found him, I'm just huge sigh of relief, just super pumped, super happy. I cannot tell you how many hours and miles that I put on in the spring, in the summer fighting the mosquitoes and the deer flies, in the fall in-season scouting this particular place, trying to learn as much as I can. And I know that this deer has been, for the most part, we've been focusing probably 3/4 of a mile down, and I did some more in-season scouting last weekend, and I found tracks that had to be his just based on the size. I think he's the only deer back here that's this big, and it was a little bit closer to this direction. So then today, with the kind of the crappy warm weather and the high winds, when Sam and I got down, we were like, okay, let's just take some of the stuff that we haven't really scouted and let's just walk it. We'll kind of go zigzag with the wind in our face and just still hunt it, scout it, learn it, and the rest. Obviously, this deer, he was either cruising here for does, or this is part of his range. So this is my biggest buck, biggest public land buck, biggest Wisconsin buck, biggest whatever you want to call it. This habitat has been a challenge to figure out. It's been a struggle. The bedding is not as predictable as it is in, say, like marsh country. The pinch points aren't as defined as they are in hill country. So to be able to get it done on this land that we put so much effort into trying to learn, it means a lot. All right, so I did want to touch on the shot again. So the shot placement, it was just left on the left side of the brisket, and then the exit hole is just behind this front shoulder, coming out there. So that makes me think that what happened on this shot is potentially I hit heart. We'll find out once I open them up, but based on the amount of blood that we saw right away at the impact and all the way down the blood trail, there's a lot of, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of vasculature in that front forward portion of the chest cavity. On a frontal or a strong quartering 2 shot, you gotta be really confident in your equipment. On the ground definitely helps, close helps. There's, I think, a time and a place for it, but you always wanna make sure you're taking the best shot you have available. Reading that deer's body language, it looked like he was about ready to get out of here. He definitely, something wasn't sitting well with him. It was one of those now or never type situations, and I felt comfortable with taking that shot. This one turned out pretty well, and couldn't be happier. We got a chore to get him out of here. He's big-bodied deer. He's run down a little bit, you can tell, but he's tagged already, registered in the system. So we'll get him out, get him back to the vehicle sometime tonight.